Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat disinfected.
Oh, Kiernan, how are you?
I'm okay, Ryan. How are you? How's quarantine?
Quarantine is not so bad, you know? Here in Bushwick. What? I mean, it's bad? It's really bad? No, quarantine. Look, I'm in New York City.
The epicenter. Sure.
The epicenter.
Yeah.
The coronavirus outbreak. But we have delivery here. All the delis are still open. A lot of great house parties. No, I'm kidding about that last part. That's not funny. And we are not even at the global out of office headquarters. We had to shut that whole thing down.
The studios are gone.
Hundreds
we are recording in our
Hundreds
homes.
of employees were let go. Really. The crew that makes Out of Office, so tens of thousands of people come together to put this together.
And
every week. Now it's just
Ryan
you and I. It's like Jimmy Kimmel. It's like you and I and an iPhone.
And we don't like confrontation. So we just locked the door to the headquarters. We didn't tell anybody that we were closed, but just we think they probably figured it out because they'd have to touch a door handle to get in, and so we're gone. Yeah, there are basically two things I think we should talk about today. Well, first we should lead off by saying.
Has anyone ever taken a short walk around their neighborhood? I mean, that is...
talk about feeding your wanderlust. So I guess first we should talk about being straight with the audience that you may have noticed that we didn't post an episode last Tuesday. And that's because Ryan and I are really struggling with how you host a podcast about travel when no one can travel and everyone is terrified. And we are seeing across our audience that folks are, more concerned, rightly, with listening to the New York Times daily about how not to die than about, the most bizarre museums in London. I mean, it's like hard to even say those episodes now. London's totally shut down.
There's nothing like this
in history. It does feel like wartime in a certain way.
Yeah.
Though, we're lucky that the sacrifices we have to make are staying at home.
Right.
Now,
and not delivery. People were like, we're willing to stay at home. But,
I just don't understand how to do delivery. What am I going to? I'm going to disinfect the cardboard boxes that come into my house. I don't know how to do that.
Well, actually, believe it or not, I learned what to do from Senator Romney, who's a real hero on this. And what you do is you get your delivery, you take it out of the packages, you throw and you plate it. You throw all the packages away, and then you wash your hands. And as far as we can tell, the food is actually probably pretty safe because it's a respiratory illness. So eating it's not really how you get it. So as long as you don't inhale your food, like don't go over your food and just breathe as much of it as you can, you'll probably be okay.
So I can't eat my meals pureed through my nose like I'm used to?
No. I mean, it's not the way I would do it.
So Ryan, basically what you and I have decided is that we're going to be posting episodes maybe every other week. And generally, we're going to be trying to cater to topics that folks will find useful during the pandemic. So today, for example.
Useful during the pandemic.
Well,
not medical advice. Like, unlike the president, we don't have any recommendations of herbs or supplements or malaria drugs that you could overdose on.
So we're going to go on a schedule where we're not going to post regularly.
Right.
We're only going to post when we have something that we feel is useful to say. Now, today's topic is one example of that. And that's we're going to each give a couple recommendations of books, TV or movies, and then games or other sort of amusements that we think are fitting for the quarantine and will still feed your wanderlust. And so it's sort of the spirit of the last stop. We're breaking our format too. It's the spirit of the last stop. And I would say these are recommendations you're not going to get other places. And we're also not going to overload you. We're not saying 10 books, 10 movies. These are just a few.
No, I mean, folks have the time.
Yeah,
we could do that.
Well, yeah, it's true. We could do that. But I think it's more useful. They're getting that list from everywhere online. We're going to give just a couple recommendations that Ryan and I think.
This is like every other list online, but it's smaller, folks. Yeah. It's less ideas. You could tackle these.
It's not less. It's just better ideas. It's a few better ideas.
So before we start with books, I want to tell you a problem I've been having reading novels in the last 10 days. And that is, I will read a novel, and there'll be a scene, and the people will be doing totally normal things. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, gosh, these folks are not taking this coronavirus very seriously at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been watching some TV where people are like going to bars and they're out at restaurants and they're going over seeing their elderly parents.
Unbelievable. The privilege we had even weeks ago to do all these things. Now it's like, it invades every aspect of your mind.
Yes,
right?
it does.
It's like,
it does.
Yeah. So I haven't. So the point is, I'm not going to recommend a novel because I'm struggling to get through novels right now because all the characters are not social distancing enough. In my, you could read like Walden's Pond. That might be a good, a book about serious isolation. The Ted Kaczynski story.
Yeah, but now it's been revealed that Walden Pond, he could walk to his parents' house, like he was like pretending. Thoreau was just pretending that he was way out. I mean, it's sort of how we're all just pretending, like we all live, super far away from things we want to go do.
Well, on that note, what book are you reading right now, Kiernan?
So this is a book that I read a little bit ago, but I haven't brought it to the podcast, and I think it is a good and interesting and entertaining read that will take you out of our current time and mindset and give you something to just escape into. And it's a book called The Big Oyster, History on the Half Shell by Mark Kurlansky. So, Ryan, this is basically the story of oyster farming and eating in New York City. And were you aware that, New York Harbor and the surrounding waters used to be the absolute oyster growing and eating capital of the world up through the early 1900s, 1910s, and sort of ending in late 1920s, just before the Depression. New York City oysters were renowned around the world, and it was just standard that all New Yorkers ate oysters.
I love oysters. I did not know that New York especially was known for that. I grew up on the Chesapeake Bay, which was also an oyster heaven at one point, but has been overfished, over whatever the terminology is.
I like over-oystered. That's good.
Over-oystered, yeah. But I love oysters, and it is interesting to know that New York had that culinary role.
And what I particularly like about this story is that while it's focused on oysters, it really gives you a vivid scene of what New York City was like in this time. And I particularly remember there were stories about how there were these saloon boats, these oyster boats, where they would go out, they would just pull up hundreds and hundreds. They would dredge. They would just pull up hundreds of oysters, and then they would pull up alongside Manhattan. They would dock, and then folks would come on, and they were a full-service bar and restaurant where you would go crazy on oysters, and there'd be music and dancing. And it was just oysters were a real reason to gather together. And so,
you know that oysters can give you a little bit of little energy in the bedroom.
I remember that because frequently there were oysters available at the rectory when I was an altar boy. I never really understood why, but it's something that I've been reflecting on as I have more time these days.
Yeah, Father Frank was like, "Oh, the oyster's really good with a bottle of white wine." I never understood that.
Okay, well, so I think that The Big Oyster, it's a diverting read. It will take you back to a time where we could actually see each other and gather together. It's also just a sort of a quirky, undersung history, and it's short. It's readable. You can fly through it, pick it up, read for 10 minutes, put it down, to panic for an hour, pick it back up. And so a good little escapist history.
When you describe New York City back in those oyster days, I can't help but imagine that whole Game of Thrones plot line where she was an oyster sales girl on the docks. Have you ever seen Game of Thrones?
Sorry, I don't watch Game of Thrones. No.
Okay,
it's funny for you who makes fun of me for Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, and yet you're referencing Game of Thrones.
Only because there's this whole oyster shucking 3 or 4 episodes that
there are 3 or 4 episodes about oyster shucking.
they made a lot of episodes of Game of Thrones. Most of them folks don't know. Most of them are about oyster shucking.
I didn't realize. No, Ryan, I went for something that was far away from the pandemic. I believe your choice a little bit more depressing.
Yeah, I'm leaning into it. I am reading The Great Influenza by John M. Barrie. And this is a story of the 1918 flu epidemic.
Oh, my God.
And what makes this really interesting is it tells the story not only of the flu epidemic and everything that went into how they stopped it and how they responded. And how terrible it was. I mean, truly a terrible epidemic. But it also gives the other side of the story, which is a sort of the development of modern medicine in the United States through the founding of Johns Hopkins. So it's a really interesting story of these folks these doctors, physicians who brought over European ideas about medicine, which were radically more advanced, and were able to sort of help with the flu epidemic by being able to understand, what the virus was, what were some strategies that people could take to limit through social distancing like we're doing now. So it's a really interesting read. It's epic. I mean, it is 800 pages, and it is a lot of detail about this flu epidemic. But it is interesting to be reading now because seeing all the things that we've known for 100 years. That took so long to implement even here in the United States. Things like shutting down the bars and restaurants and limiting, not letting huge conferences happen. So been an interesting read, not escapist really in any way, except that the flu of 1918, almost said the Spanish flu. We don't call it that anymore. The 1918 flu epidemic, really terrible flu. It's worse than coronavirus. I have to say it.
Wow, really?
It was a serious killer.
And are you finding any other interesting or strange parallels with what we're going through today, or do you feel like, boy, they handled that better than we're handling it?
Well, I think the parallels are how little has changed in how we what are the strategies, right? Like there isn't some fast forward 100 years, there isn't some. Right, there's no universal flu vaccine, right? There's no universal antivirals that work.
Or even like a way to dial up medicines fast.
Right, or even a way to test in any serious way.
Right.
So, what's shocking is how little has changed and actually what works. What works, getting people to not give it to each other and letting the virus die off that way, flattening the curve, as they say. Was one of the primary strategies in 1918.
I mean, the one thing that we can hope that comes out of this is perhaps this will be a priority. Putting plans in place for a future version of this will become a priority for the U.S.
If it's anything I know about humanity, it's that they're so rational
from our history.
Yeah, we're fantastic at it. Yeah.
All right, so for me, that's the Big Oyster, and from Ryan,
the Great Influenza, the story of the deadliest pandemic in history. 50 million people. That's a lot of people.
Oh, brother. So one feel-good book, one feel-bad book. Now, Ryan, how about movies or TV? Any recommendation that you've got on that side?
So, been watching a lot of movies, obviously. The joke in my quarantine house is when work ends, like, what do you want to do tonight? Because the options are really limited.
Catherine and I allowed ourselves to drink every night of the first week, but this week we've decided we're going to have to dial it back.
Oh, gosh. You live in my... So last week we did a bottle of wine a night, and then this week it's that seems like it's excessive. Yeah. But I think I have a lot of theories about natural wine. I think it's protective. But everybody saw Parasite this year. Huge, massive smash. Best Picture win. The first foreign language film to win Best Picture. Not as many folks have seen the same director's film from a few years ago called Snowpiercer. Have you seen Snowpiercer?
No, I've heard the title and I've watched the trailer, but I have not seen the movie.
So you got to watch it. It is a fantastically interesting film. It's set in a world where we have over-responded to climate change through geo-hacking and destroyed the world by accident. So we turned the entire world into a snow globe. And the only place that humanity still exists is this train that was built by like an Elon Musk sort of character that just goes around the world in circles and has this sort of quote unquote, engine that goes on forever, perpetual engine kind of situation. So we join these characters 17 years into their isolation on this train. And the train has become sort of the different classes of society. So first class is incredibly beautiful, and third class is a disaster, nightmare, a horror show. Clearly Bong Joon-ho has likes to make films about class struggle, and so the film's really about a revolution on this train, and It is a wild movie. Super, definitely sci-fi. Heavy, a lot of heavy sort of satire, and really, it's exciting. It is an exciting ride. Quite literally, ride on this train.
Fun. And is it streaming somewhere, or you got to rent it?
It is streaming. Yeah, it was streaming on Netflix.
All right,
so
great.
Check it out.
Oh my God.
And,
now, these streaming services must just be seeing an explosion.
I know. Some highlights in the film. You've got Ed Harris as the Elon Musk sort of character. Ed Harris, who loves to play like a weird god-esque character whenever possible. It's like, who should we get for this weird god character? Have you seen The Truman Show, obviously?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, same idea.
Oh, that's how I approach this podcast. I like to think of myself as the weird god-like character.
Oh, I thought you meant we have a huge audience that we just don't know about. Well, that's not true. Definitely Ed Harris. And then, of course, the amazing Tilda Swinton as this sort of, number two in charge of the train. So that's my recommendation. It is a bit escapist, but still makes you think.
So my recommendation is a series that is available on Disney Plus. I really, really like Disney Plus. I got it for The Mandalorian, the great Star Wars series, but I'm keeping it past that because there are so many little treasures here. Ryan, did you know when I was growing up, I really wanted to be a Disney animator? That was like my absolute dream job.
Yeah, I remember this about you.
And in fact, I would argue that early Disney World trip that I remember vividly from elementary school may be the source of my wanderlust, because I remember going to Epcot and like thinking I was in the different countries. I wasn't that bright. And they have the World Showcase there, where you walk through a bunch of different countries, facsimiles of those countries. And one thing that not many people know about Disney is that Walt Disney himself was a great innovator when it came to nature documentaries. He was super passionate about nature, about conservation. That's actually when they opened the part of the park called the Animal Kingdom. That was partially the reason, because it was very true to Walt Disney's vision for educating the public about.
Yeah, when I go to Animal Kingdom, I think like this is a true.
Hey, listen, it's trying to teach people to be more responsible. Okay, you got to
different times.
So speaking of different times actually gets to exactly what I think is so interesting and fun. So buried on Disney Plus, you got a lot of the headliner animated films that we all know Disney for, but they've really delved deep into the archive. And one series of documentaries that they have on Disney Plus is called True Life Adventures. And this is an old documentary series that aired from 1948 to 1960. It won 8 different Academy Awards over the years for this series of 14 films that they made. And many of them are available on Disney Plus. And they are a real snapshot in time of how folks were thinking about nature and conservation in that time. They're also... They're not exactly documentary. They kind of put together these whimsical storylines, and they make the animals into kind of characters. And I would call out particularly 2 that I think are very entertaining and well worth an hour. So the first is called Yellowstone Cubs. And this is the story of 2 little bear cubs in Yellowstone National Park. You will be seeing, some human interaction and interaction with human things that they do not encourage in the national parks today, but they're extremely adorable. And it's very neat to be able to see the Yellowstone National Park kind of in this heyday of road trips and family vacations.
Disney Plus must be full of a bunch. By the way, I need to get Disney Plus just while I'm here for this. for this quarantine.
Pandemic Plus. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. How many documentaries are in this series?
So there are 14 of them.
14.
They vary in how good they are. I think Yellowstone Cubs would be the best and the most enjoyable. looking at the artifice of the documentary making, it was of its time. And that's part, you have to accept that and be cheerful. And in fact, a disclaimer comes up before you watch it that says, some of the comments and portrayals may not be true to today's standards. The other one that I would recommend is called The Story of Perry, Perri. And this is a story of a little pine squirrel named Perry. And it takes you through Perry's childhood all the way through the maturity. And, the music, the voiceover, these are fun, escapist documentaries. I think because we've all gotten so used to we've all gotten used to the hyper realistic, impressive cinematography of all the BBC nature documentaries. This takes us back to a simpler, enjoyable time where filmmakers were just starting to experiment with the form.
And they have it's all this narration about I think I've seen
storylines.
these.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, they used to play them on Disney Channel when we were kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I think I remember sort of just the narration of the Okay.
One thing that I would just mention is they did not include a Disney classic called White Wilderness, which was made in 1958. And this was the film that famously propagated the lie that lemmings all fall off cliffs and commit suicide, mass suicide. That was, again, them trying to make a real storyline a little bit punchier. And so that's not true of lemmings. And White Wilderness has, for some reason, been kept off the Disney Plus platform.
Well, we're going to dive into that. I think for our listeners deserve to know why White Wilderness is not on the Disney Plus platform.
Absolutely. Now, Ryan,
is that the sort of famous Disney thing that was been locked away forever? Oh God, what is
the Song of the South?
Song of the South. Is that on Disney Plus?
Song of the South isn't on Disney Plus. Are you crazy?
I thought that they were doing this thing where they had back in the day, people were racist or something. Like they had before each new Disney. That's not true. They haven't put context around some of the old stuff.
They put context, but only around the stuff that's not blatantly wrong, racist, horrible. All right, Ryan. Now we each have one more pick. I would put this. This is more in the general attraction. So it's not a book. It's not a movie. It's just another thing that each of us wanted to plug. And I believe you brought a game.
I did bring a game. This is a really fun game that I just discovered with a friend when we were doing a Zoom hangout. Zoom. I don't know what they call these now. Corn Zooms.
Jeez.
And it's a game called Drawful 2, and it's really fun because you play it on your computer, but you set up your computer, and then you load Drawful 2. It plays on a million different platforms, and we'll link to it. And then everybody puts in a number that they see on their screen, and so it syncs them up. So I can play from my house, you can play from your house, so on and so forth. And it's sort of a Pictionary made by the You Don't Know Jack people.
Yeah.
So
I love that game.
Totally. So it's in all the same sort of zaniness of that. So that's it is a really good time, and it sort of makes you feel like you're with all your friends playing this game, even though you're really just playing online. But you can have your computer open and your Zoom, and you can make fun of each other and all that stuff. So Drawful 2, I don't even like to play games that much, and I enjoyed this a lot.
All right, and that sounds very fun. How does it feed the spirit of Wanderlust? Well, that's to be debated, but it does sound.
Well, I mean, some of the prompts might be related to travel.
That is a real.
One. I remember one of them was called the Train of Love or something. So that's a train.
Do you remember what trains were? That makes me realize, Ryan. You're going to have to cancel your trip up here that you were going to take. So you canceled one time. And so it seems like the pandemic is going to get you out of this visit to Boston.
I want to get to Boston as soon as possible. Once this pandemic ends and Boston gets rid of that cholera problem they've had since the 1700s, I am all the way there.
I mean, don't worry. I know it's not your fault, but I will be a jerk about it. Now, Ryan, I want to recommend a YouTube series. It's actually a television series in the UK. It airs on Channel 4, and it is explicitly to feed your Wanderlust. It's called Travel Man. It's a British television series with a comedian named Richard Ayoade, which is Richard Ayoade. And he's very, very funny. and it's been cut up and posted to YouTube and all over the internet. And basically, he takes trips to mostly European cities and shoots 20 to 30-minute episodes where he plays a bit of a character as if he's a man who hates to travel, which is ironic for the fact that he has a travel show. But he has a very wry British sense of humor. I discovered this show when I was looking for information about my trip to Iceland a few years ago. And I have been a big fan ever since, have watched this top and bottom. And so I will link to a few of the highlighted episodes. But if you're looking for something, we've all exhausted the Anthony Bourdain oeuvre. We've all watched, the Rick Steves catalog on PBS. Well, this is a new and very funny take on a travel show. Travel Man, Channel 4, British television, and it'll help you discover a great new comedian. And it will just...
Whoa. Richard seems cool. The new guy looks like the worst. He just took over this year.
But Ryan, we should call out that there is a new British comedian who has taken over the mantle from Richard Ayoade. His name is Hugo Boss, and he seems terrible. So he's kind of a bro.
Just looking at him, I'm like, that is the worst.
Yeah, I think he's a bit of a British, like a soccer lad kind of character. So I would recommend you go back to the hyper intellectual, very wry sense of humor of Richard Ayoade, and I will be posting specifically episodes of his that I like.
Yeah, that's good. And I will watch the episodes that you approve, but I will not watch that Hugo Boss guy, any of those post 2020 episodes. Not for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good rule of thumb. And so I'll post some of the best ones that I've watched in the show notes. And hopefully you can fit these in between Zoom work meetings.
Well, folks, here is where we generally talk about what the next episode is going to be. But because we live in a world of uncertainty right now, we don't actually know what the next episode is going to be. But if you have ideas, if you have thoughts, things we could talk about that are travel related or travel adjacent over the next 2 months of this experience that we're all having together, shoot them our way, outofofficepod@gmail.com or on the old Instagram at OOO podcast. Slide into Kiernan's DMs. They're always open for you. And, let us know what you'd like us to cover.
Yeah, I actually got a note from a listener who had a very good idea that I am going to pursue that said, you know what? This might just be the pandemic we needed to get Rick Steves on the podcast because, he's probably not traveling around to events. He's probably just sitting at his house in Washington. I mean, one of the epicenters.
Hopefully he is super socially isolated because he's not a young man.
And I'm going to reach out and see, hey, if Rick Steve's got time on his hands, I got a mic, he's got a computer, we're good to go. And we could get on and talk about what the world of travel is going to look like post-pandemic. So guys, the quest for Rick Steves continues.
And look, any other celebrities who listen to our pod, give us a call, give us a ring. I mean, I'm not going to give you our number, but email us.
Slip into the DMs.
We know you're bored enough to be doing like montages of you all singing, Imagine to each other.
Oh my gosh, that was brutal.
I think that my new favorite thing is like celebrities in mansions complaining about social isolation. in front of their pool.
Yeah, with
like,
their
we're gonna
giant
get
backyards. And they're like picking fresh vegetables from their gardens in LA. It's rough. It looks really hard for Gal Gadot. Gadot? I've heard it both ways.
I can't keep track.
Right. The other thing that's really been irritating me, maybe this should be the irritating minute during the pandemic. Just complain at the end of the episode. I really hate, I've been seeing that Travel and Leisure magazine has been posting these, they've been posting these articles that are all about, if you're stuck at home, but you want to feel like you get out there, here are 5 national parks that feature virtual tours. And here are 12 museums that you can click through. And, you can't make it to Machu Picchu. Use Google Arts and Culture to make you feel like you're there. I feel like, Ryan, you and I, we're not going to paper over the fact that the pandemic sucks. And that for those of us who like to get out there and explore, this is a trying time. So we're going to be a dose of travel realism, and we're going to suffer through it together.
Until that time, and we don't know yet, when we return to you, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is We're All Out of Office Now, a quarantined travel podcast.
This seat disinfected.
You know, they say that Shakespeare wrote King Lear during the bubonic plague.
Yeah, absolutely.
You and I are going to record at least 3 to 4 podcasts.
Absolutely. I agree. They're very comparable.